I was probably around 7 or 8 years old at this point, and it was a Saturday morning. Every Saturday morning, my mum and dad would get me and my siblings up out of bed to go for a morning walk before breakfast as a family. I loved experiencing the nature around us as we lived out of town between some acreage that the neighbour owned at the time. But that was just one side of the road though. On the other side of the road was scrub and bushland, which explains how this story goes. There was a big gum tree in the scrub halfway up the road, and it was teeming with bird life. There was also power lines that would follow along the road next to the paddocks on the other side of the road. The birds would fly from the big gum tree down to the power lines or around the other surrounding trees close by. There was a certain bird though, and my dad already had been getting encounters with this bird. This bird was called a dollar bird. It didn't whistle like a normal bird. It would make a low-pitched giggling kind of sound. You would know as soon as you hear it. And at this time of year, it was swooping. As we passed the tree, we could hear the bird calling out, the sound of the giggle. My dad said to embrace ourselves because it was going to come. One quick swoop at my dad's head, and then it flew up and landed on the power lines, cackling at us. Then the bird swooped me, this time, before it flew back into the scrub as we were walking away. We had kept walking up the road for a further kilometre, and then we turned around and walked back the way we came, which meant we had to walk back past that stupid bird again. We got to our neighbour's house on the hill, and we could already hear it calling out. As we got closer to the tall gum tree, we could hear not one dollar bird, but two. They were calling out to each other with their evil low-pitched giggle. The sounds they made really put me on edge. We got back to the gum tree, and we now see $2 birds sitting on the power lines waiting for us to walk past. One swooped my dad again, the other went for my mum. Then they were back up on the power lines again. I grabbed a long stick off the side of the road, and I had it ready. Then they both swooped again, one of them at me, and I'm not sure who the other one swooped, but I waved my stick at the one swooping me, and then it retreated, with the other following. They didn't swoop us again after that. We got home and had breakfast, and then got ready to go to church. What a lovely start to the day, getting swooped by strange birds. I was in primary school, and I would have been about 10 years old. Our class went for a walk into the bushland just west of the school grounds. Most of the school grounds were surrounded by forestry and bushland, but there were also some wetlands within the bushland that we would walk by as well. It was very quiet, and all you could hear were the crickets and the frogs from the ponds nearby, or the few birds that would be up in the gum trees. I think on this walk from memory, we were to collect certain things for a nature research. For example, a type of leaf, a flower, a pine cone, or a gum nut. We would also have to write down a list of things we would see or hear. I take it that was for any animals or birds we would encounter. Whatever we were doing, it was fun. A lot more fun than just sitting in the classroom having normal lessons. One of the kids yelled out that they could see a kookaburra in the tree. It was just sitting there, flicking its tail up and down. It sort of looked annoyed by our presence. I mean, this was in the middle of no man's land, so of course the bird probably felt threatened. What gave the fact away that it seemed annoyed was obviously the flick of the tail, and the fact that it was making short, low-pitched laughs at us, like it was rolling its tongue in its beak. But all of a sudden, it swooped really fiercely down at one of the other kids. And then again. Holy crap! I've never seen a kookaburra get angry before. I thought they were friendly. I guess in every species, you get the good and the bad. Our teacher got us to then leave the area and move on. We kept walking and completed our search. The kookaburra then left us alone. Fast forward to being in my 20s, I was out and about with some friends and we decided to go for a drive out to a lake. Half an hour out of town, we would drive down the highway and then we would turn off down an old-looking road that would turn to dirt. The road would go right into the forestry that backed off from the lake. We got to the lake, parked and got out and had a look around. It was a lovely day out there. It was quiet and all you could hear was the breeze on the water and the breeze blowing through the trees. You could also hear a few birds around up in the bush, but there was one particular bird that was calling out, and it was rather close, breaking the silence. It was a grey butcher bird. It was up in the trees next to the water. We seen the wharf that would go out onto the lake, so we decided to go out there, but before we reached the wharf, the grey butcher bird had swooped my mate that was in front of me. "What the hell?" he called out. It was making a weary call that it would make if it wasn't singing. We ignored it and kept walking out onto the wharf. Now we could see the butcher bird flying from the tree it flew to back to the tree it was originally in. It must have been nesting. I do know grey butcher birds can be more aggressive than the black and white pied butcher birds, so this wasn't any surprise. The three of us were out on the wharf now, and the butcher bird was watching us. We knew as soon as we would walk back onto the land, it would attack us again. It was making its weary call again, warning us not to come any closer. But we had no choice, so we ran, one by one, back onto the land, yelling and waving our arms around, which actually deterred the butcher bird from swooping us again. We then went down the bush track further along the lakeside, away from the butcher bird, and it didn't swoop us again, thankfully. Fast forward to about 5 years ago, I was at work, and being a cleaner, I would be cleaning a certain high school. This high school was home to a lot of different birds. Cleaning this high school was stressful enough, let alone dealing with the birds on the grounds. Included in my scopes for this site was the gymnasium, and a part of cleaning the gym was an outdoor toilet block next door, and next to this toilet block was the oval and a sand pit they would use for athletic sports. In this sand pit were a pair of masked lapwing birds. They had laid eggs in the sand. When lapwings nest, they nest on the ground, and they are very territorial and very overprotective of their eggs or their chicks. You really have to be careful this bird doesn't hook into you with the spurs on their wings when they swoop. It can be a little fatal. Well, as I walked past the sand pit to go to the toilet block to clean it, one of the lapwings started calling out at me. I hadn't seen it at first, but the bird flew up at me with its wings fully fanned. I ran into the toilet block, freaked out, trying to catch my breath from running. How the hell am I going to get back past those stupid things, I thought. I finished cleaning the toilet block and I walked back towards the gym, and both the lapwings were calling out at me, but they didn't swoop me again. I think they knew I didn't want to go anywhere near them. From here on, I stay right away from masked lapwings. They do freak me out to this day, due to their spurs and their weird faces. About 2 years ago now, I was at work, working for the same company, but cleaning a primary school, a lot closer to the city. This school had a duck pond, just over the other side of the oval. There were a pair of Pacific ducks, which normally kept to themselves, but then there were a lot of wood ducks. These wood ducks would be walking all over the school grounds foraging for leftover food from the children earlier in the day, and they were breeding like crazy. Every time a pair of wood ducks would have ducklings with them, the male wood duck would charge at you if you came close enough to its family. And I already knew this, as at my mum and dad's house we experienced a lot of wood ducks there, so I knew what they were like. But this particular male wood duck I will never forget. I had finished cleaning my part of the school, and I would walk over to a building across the oval to clean before heading home. This building was where they had OSH held at the time, which was after school care. As I was walking across the oval, there was a family of wood ducks walking towards me. I thought this was strange, as they normally would avoid people. I mean, the mother and chicks stayed back, but Mr. Daddy Duck came charging at me with his beak wide open, quacking fiercely at me. It made me kind of jog away from it, but Daddy Duck wasn't done yet. I really shouldn't have turned my back, because the duck flew up at me and pecked me on the back of the head. Ouch! Crap! Get lost, you stupid thing! I yelled and swung my keys at it. I got far enough away that it decided it was done attacking me. I went and cleaned the last building before heading home, and when I went to walk back across the oval, it had gotten darker, so the wood ducks were all gone. They must have been in the duck pond now. From now on, I stay right away from wood ducks that have ducklings. After that encounter, I wouldn't want that to happen again.